you've heard all this testimony from my colleagues, from the monopoly industry that they're limited in other states and barred in other states. And we know there's an issue with public perception. And here's a limitation bill. So there it is.
And the limitation would apply. A member of the House of Delegates could get, or a candidate for the House of Delegates could get $20,000 per election cycle, which is 2 years. The candidate for governor could get $20,000 from one source for 4 years in an election cycle. Is that correct? Is that the way?
It's per campaign cycle.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I ask staff under, I think under both bills, Senator Petersen's bill online, somewhere between 35 and 40, does that allow for corporation? 38 maybe?
Senator Eben, Mr. Chair, person is defined in 24.2, 945.1 to include corporation, so.
That was my intent.
Okay.
And your bill, Senator Eben, would limit the amount of campaign contribution per year.
Yeah,
the way I read it. So, and basically it would be up to $10,000 per statewide candidate. So $40,000 for an election cycle for governor, and up to $5,000 per member running for the House of Delegates for two in the cycle.
I think what I'd like to do, Mr. Chairman, is let Senator Petersen present his.
Okay.
He's worked a lot harder on it, and then I'll probably strike. I'd like to strike mine. As long as he's going to present his, I think the committee can hear from him.
Okay. Do we have a motion to strike?
Or roll. I'm sorry. Roll mine in.
Okay.
Roll mine.
Do we have a motion for a substitute for 448 or 889 into 448?
488, Mr. Chair.
488. I apologize. Okay. A motion and a second that we create a substitute with Senator Eben as the chief co-patron. Okay, Senator. Yeah. Senator Petersen.
Yeah, and once again, Mr. Chair, it's $20,000 per cycle. It makes no distinction between individuals, corporations. There's some language which I believe is cut and pasted from the federal statute about control and children and things of that nature, and aggregation of family contributions. Contributions by spouses are deemed separate. Unemancipated children under 18 are considered contributions by the parents. So there's some details in here. It's a little bit of a pain, but the bottom line is you either believe in this concept or you don't. I believe in it. So that's where I am.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Spruill.
Senator Petersen. Yes, sir. I can see for the delegate for a senator, but I'm looking at when my district is compact to North and Chesapeake, and one donor for $20,000, I can see that. But for a governor who has the whole state, and it's kind of low, so why would you want to limit the governor same as the delegate who represents only 80,000 plus, what have you, 80,000, right. 20,000 per candidate, and yet he has only 80,000 when the governor has to campaign for 8 million folks. So why would you do that to him? I could see it for us, but could you do a little bit more for the governor and lieutenant governor since they're statewide?
I would simply say there are people running for president that have a lot stricter restrictions than this. So this is more generous than they have on the federal side. I'm not wedded to 20,000, Senator Spruill. If you came back and said, really ought to be 30, I just don't want to have unlimited. I don't like the $500,000 people dumping $500,000. That's a problem.
Mr. Chairman, I understand that, sir. I'm just saying that because the House we only represent 80,000 and the Senate 225,000 and the governor 8 million. That's what I'm saying. Could it be for the statewide candidates? Could it be a little bit more? That's my question.
Well, Mr. Chair, I defer to the will of committee. I'm a big believer in having one simple standard that you got one number, and whether I write a check to Lionel Spruill or I write a check to Mark Warner or whomever, or whoever our statewide governor is, Northern. I mean, they have one standard.
Senator McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of questions to make sure I understand how this compares to the federal system. Am I correct that under the federal system, there's one set of limits for a primary season, but then once the primary is over, there's a new limit?
That was the bill you just struck, and I hated that. because you got to have two separate accounts, one for the primary, one for the general. And everyone I've never run for Congress, I never will, but everyone I talk to says it's really a pain to have the two separate accounts, so I just combined it.
Further question, Mr. Chair.
Senator McClellan.
Also, in the federal system, once an individual has reached their maximum amount, they are still allowed to give to a party committee or something like DGA or DLCC or a state party or the DNC.
Right.
Would that still be allowed under your bill?
Yes, sure.
Senator Surville.
Mr. Chairman, I'm in general more open to this than I was obviously the last bill, but I want to give you a hypothetical. Suppose a state senator wants to run for governor, and suppose she has, say, $100,000 in her campaign account, and she decides to run for governor. Under this bill, it looks to me like she can't take any of the money out of her state Senate account and contribute it to a statewide account. Is that right?
You know, that's a good question. And again, I'm not something I lose a lot of sleep over. But you may be correct that if you've got one account, you know, I assume like when Jennifer Wexton had to do this and people had to take money in their state account and transfer it over to their federal account or
Or their own state account?
You can't do that.
You
Can't do
for
it. Well, there you go.
That's what I did.
Yeah. I mean, I guess you could promote the heck out of yourself in your Senate district.
Mr. Chairman, further questions?
Senator Surville.
I suspect,
Buy some ads.
and there's another female senator. Is she still here? I guess she left, but she might know the answer, given that she went through this too. But, you know, at the federal system, they have a rule against coordination, and they prohibit coordination because coordination is a sort of indirect way of spending money, which is why you see these silly videos of Mitch McConnell, you know, turning to the camera and smiling and hanging out with his wife and not doing anything, just sort of sitting out there on the internet for anybody to pick up if they so choose to use. So I don't see any anti-coordination provision in this statute. So am I correct that, for example, if somebody wanted to help one of us to the tune of $100,000, they could have a conversation with us and say, you know, hey, I'd really like to do a mail campaign or a TV ad about this, and they could just spend the money themselves on TV, and because we don't have an anti-coordination rule, it wouldn't constitute a contribution.
I think trying to violate a criminal statute or this is civil. You know, whether or not it could be charged as a conspiracy, I don't know. You know what? At the end of the day, this is a step. And would there have to be laws built around it? Yeah, of course. But this is a policy statement saying, you know what? The people that put $500,000 in and buy a Commonwealth's attorney's race or a sheriff's race or what have you, we're done with it. Okay? We're done with it. You're going to raise the money in the community or you're going to be capped at $20,000.
Senator Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I share the concerns about having only one donation amount for different races, but you know, separate from that, I have a question. Would you be open to an amendment on the no limit contributions from an individual or their family members? Because frankly, if a wealthy person runs, they can do exactly what you just said. They dump $500,000 and buy the race. And frankly, the way this is right now, I don't think it's fair because the person who's not wealthy is going to get a limit at $20,000. But yet, if you're wealthy, you can dump whatever you can into your campaign.
Well, I'd say there's been people that have run for U.S. Senate that have handled that. People run for president, including one candidate right now who's dealing with that issue.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Bell.
I would respond. I mean, federally, you've got, as you described earlier, a million ways someone can get around that. But here, we're going to limit that candidate to $20,000, and yet the wealthy person can go and dump however much they want into the race. Would you be willing to amend this to take away those unlimited contributions from a person or their family?
I'm going to defer to my phone a friend, Senator Vogel. I think limiting someone's use of their own money, that is a First Amendment issue. And I think that's been litigated in Buckley v. Vallejo. I think so. Jennifer, am I wrong?
And counsel advises me there might be some constitutional issues with what you've suggested.
I appreciate that, but I mean, respectfully, I'll have to oppose it the way it is now because I think, frankly, it creates another unfair situation, unfortunately. I like the concept, but I can't support something else that would be unfair.
Okay, are there additional questions for the patron? Are there people who would like to speak in favor of this bill? Are there those that have a contrary view? Okay, the bill is before you. What's your pleasure?
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Are there further motions? Open the roll.
Six ayes, 9 noes.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'll